And just wait for the... Got it.
Okay. All right, bear with us. It's one of our first meetings back since hibernation for a couple years. So remembering to turn my mic on. All right, welcome to the Maplewood Housing and Economic Development Commission meeting for, not the minute, not the last one, for Thursday, April 21st. We'll get to the January meeting here shortly. But today is Thursday, April 21st, and I will call the meeting to order at 6:05. With that, we will move on to roll call, and let's just go from my left on over. If you just want to say your name and present for the record keeping.
This is Belving, present.
Mark Jenkins, present.
Holly Kep, present. Sarah Burdash, present.
All right, we have a full house tonight, so that is fantastic. With that, we will move on to the approval of the agenda. So if you've had a chance to review the agenda from our January 20th meeting, let me know if there are any additions, subtractions, corrections, any changes we need to make? Not hearing any. I will look for a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
I approve.
We have a motion from Commissioner Kep. Do we have a second?
I second.
And we have a motion from Commissioner Burdash. All right, so we have a motion and a second. All of those in favor of approving the agenda as presented signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Hearing none, the motion passes ayes all. So we will move on to the approval of minutes. I'm sorry. I took these out of order. I just did approval of minutes, so we're going to jump back. We're going to do approval of agenda. Sorry, a little rusty. We'll move back to the approval of agenda. Having taken a look at the agenda, are there any additions or changes that anyone would like to make? Not yet.
Nope, okay.
Yep.
That's the agenda, this particular agenda.
Yeah, not for this one. All right. Not seeing none. Now I will look for a motion to approve the agenda as presented. All in favor of the agenda as presented signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Hearing none. The agenda passes ayes all. There we go. Now we'll get back into order here, and we'll move on to new business. So the first item is a resolution of appreciation for Commissioner Daryl Henshin. Jeff, do you have some presentation you'd like to make on that first?
Certainly, Chair and Commissioners. So last week, Daryl Henshin, who served on the commission for over 3 years, 3.5 years, he sent me an email saying that he's moving out. I think he was moving out the end of last week of the city of Maplewood, and was going to resign his position on the head seat. And so traditionally when we have a member resign, what we do is we have you consider a resolution of appreciation for their service on the commission, and then we will ultimately forward that on to the council, and they will consider that same resolution for adoption and then for recognizing Daryl for his service on head seat. So we know Daryl had a great background for the commission. He's not only an attorney, but he also actually worked for Minnesota Housing, which overlaps a lot with our housing projects we have in Maplewood. So we'll certainly miss that and appreciate the insight and service that he had on the commission for the 3.5 years he was here. So with that, we do recommend approval of the resolution that was included in your packet.
Absolutely. So I'll open it up to other commissioners first if they have comments or questions about the resolution? I think I'm the one who had the most tenure with Daryl, and to Jeff's point, always had good questions, good insight, definitely appreciated everything he did for the city on this commission, and absolutely, my recommendation is a wholehearted yay for approving this resolution of appreciation for Daryl. All right, no other comments or questions. We will go ahead and I will look for a motion to approve.
Motion to approve?
We have a motion from Commissioner Burdash. Do we have a second? And we have a second from Commissioner Vang. And by the way, since we have a lot of new people on the commission and probably new people watching live on TV, I am going to repeat the names because the minutes for our next meeting are actually transcribed from the audio, and the camera's not always pointing at the person who made the motion or the second. So I repeat it out loud so that when they put the minutes together, they know who the voice was that they're not seeing on video. So we have a motion and a second. All of those in favor of approving the resolution of appreciation for Daryl Henshin and his years of service to the city signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Hearing none, the resolution passes ayes all. And Daryl, thank you for all of your support of the city. It really is appreciated. All right, we'll move on to the second item of new business, which is the former Moose Lodge property. Jeff, I know you have some stuff for us on that
I
one.
do have lots of stuff for you on this one. If I can get the presentation pulled up on the screen, would be great. Here we go. So, Chair and Commission, I know at I'm obviously losing track of meetings because I thought our last meeting was in person, but I think at our last meeting we did a kind of a comprehensive update of all the redevelopment in Gladstone and potential projects. So later on I can give you a brief update on other projects, but we did want to dive a little bit deeper into the Moose Lodge property, the former Moose Lodge property at the northeast intersection of Frost and English, some of the background and things we're looking to do here in 2022 to position that site for sale and ultimately for redevelopment. So to provide some background, the city purchased the former Moose Lodge property back in 2019. It was an agreement that we came to with the Moose Lodge, who was looking to downsize and move, just given the kind of holding costs of that building and the maintenance that was required, and it was too big for what they needed. And so the city approached them and entered into a willing buyer, willing seller purchase agreement with them. And we closed on that. I think it was like my first week here is when we closed on that sale back in May, June of 2019. We paid $900,000 for it, which was the market value. We had an appraisal done, and we paid market value for it. And just for a little bit of background, the money for that actually came from a loan from the city, from like internal to the city. So from one of our utility funds, there's what we call an interfund loan to just fund that will ultimately get repaid once we resell the property. We have not just been, I want for the community to know this, and we certainly said it, but we've not just been sitting on the property for those 3 years. We've actually, of all the properties in Gladstone that are available for development, this is actually the one we actually get the most interest in from the development community, and we've met with a number of developers over the past 3 years that have a very strong interest in it. We may have talked in January that and so we've actually had offers. We've had multiple developers give us offers on it. You may recall back in January we had an offer from Beacon Interfaith Housing at the time for the property, and we ultimately struck a deal with them for the Gladstone house, which I can talk later on the agenda. So just know that we've been very active on it. The reason nothing's been solidified and why we've had offers and not moved forward is because we've wanted to explore site assemblage with the two adjacent properties. So on the map, the red is the kind of the L-shaped property of the former Moose Lodge, and then there are two other properties. There's a contracting business. I don't know if you can see it on here. Well, it's hard to see. The yellow outlines the property in the back is a kind of a contractor's business. It's hard to see from the road because it doesn't have any frontage, but there's a contracting business, and then up front there's that kind of mixed multi-tenant building. There's like a laundromat in there. There's an upstairs office and other retail space on the front. That's actually owned by the woman that operates the laundromat on the site. And so I know a number of these developers. We've always, wanted to explore bringing those sites into this property for a larger redevelopment. And so the developers, we've kind of said to reach out to those property owners, and various developers have gotten various agreements, but ultimately we've learned that nobody's been able to kind of assemble all of those two to bring it in for a purchase agreement. And so that's kind of one of the challenges we've had in kind of positioning this for redevelopment. So, oops, let me go back here. So what we want to do is move forward, though. We know we get a lot of the building is certainly deteriorating more. It's in very rough shape and is causing some just blight issues on the neighborhood. So we certainly want to kind of now proceed forward with a kind of an active redevelopment approach for the site. So the big question we get is why isn't the city just demoed the building? And there's really one really important consideration, and that is in order for us to keep tax increment financing, which is one of the best redevelopment tools the city has to incentivize development, in order to keep that on the table, delaying the demolition has helped us, because once we demolish the building, it starts a 3-year clock. So then we have 3 years for the project to be fully kind of built and for the tax increment district to be established. So we have wanted to be conservative on that because we don't want to tie our hands on some of the redevelopment tools that we have. So just know that that's been a consideration. But we have met with the Minnesota Department of Employment and Economic Development, and they have a redevelopment program every year. And one of those programs is around demolition costs, and it's actually a loan program where there'd be a partnership on the cost for demolition, and then should redevelopment occur, that loan could actually be forgivable. And so that application is due here and you have to wait. You can't demo it until that application has been approved by deed. So you can't get ahead of it. So that application for this year is due in July. And so we would like to submit that loan application to deed to potentially receive some additional funding from them to help finance the demolition of the building. If that's successful, probably even if it's not, the city's going to pursue the demolition of that building yet this year. That's our goal at staff, is to demolish it. The other piece that becomes some challenging is ideally demolition would occur at the same time of redevelopment, because one of the costs we'll have if we don't is there's actually a basement under that full building. And so when we demolish it, we want parking lots, the building, everything, and we don't want to just leave the foundation excavated out there. So we'd want to backfill it and at least seed it and get it planted so that there's not a big hole left out there. So it's also been a consideration is hopefully we can time this where we can get a contract with the developer to develop it, and we're kind of doing this in tandem. That's the ultimate goal. Even if we're not successful, the goal is still to proceed with demolition yet this year. I jumped the gun. So we've actually received three offers for the property. One was the Beacon Interfaith Housing, which I already referenced, and this is just this year. So these are recent offers. Beacon Interfaith Housing, which I mentioned, we have a purchase agreement with them for the Gladstone House property, so they're not interested in the Moose Lodge anymore. And then we have two other offers that we have kind of paused on because we want to look at issuing a solicitation, getting out to the broader development community and going through essentially a request for proposals or solicitation process so that we can comprehensively review, we can get it out and get as many proposals as we can so that we can be selective around what type of project is out there. But we can also compare them equally, because sometimes when you get unsolicited offers from developers, it's very difficult to compare them. You're kind of comparing apples and oranges. So we want to be able to have the same criteria across the board so we can review them fairly and equitably and move forward with the best project for the city. So presuming that you think that makes sense, we did talk to the EDA and they were supportive of that. Presumably that's the path the city's going to go. We're going to not even review the offers. Because we want those developers to be able to go back and resubmit their offers under the new proposal without showing their cards to the development community now about what their offer could potentially be for the site. So the property, and this would just be for solicitation for the property we own. We wouldn't, because we don't have the others under contract and there's no agreement for those sales, we would just be marketing the land we own. So the property is just over 2 acres. It's guided in our comp plan for mixed use, neighborhood high density. So that allows, just a brief summary of it, we do allow for kind of neighborhood focused retail and service. We would allow office, though the market for office is extremely challenged at the minute, but we certainly allow for office within it, as well as high density residential. It's expected, and this is kind of throughout the community, this is a district that's expected to lean residential. In fact, a lot of our growth around multifamily units is expected in these higher density mixed use areas. But we do allow for what we call either horizontal or vertical mixed use. So vertical mixed use is kind of retail on the ground floor. In a multi-story building, you'd have retail or service on the ground floor, and then upper stories of the building would be residential. So that's kind of a vertical mixed use. A horizontal mixed use would be separate buildings. So you still, on the parcel, you have a residential building of units, and then separate from that, you may have, it's likely a single-story retail or service commercial building to complement it. So those are the options. We allow either of those. It doesn't require one nor the other. At the high density for this, it's allowed 25 to 50 units an acre. And that's actually the highest density land use designation that we have in the city. And that's recognizing the Gladstone plan and also the leveraging the transit investment that's expected in the area, which I think I have on a future slide. So if you calculate it out, that's anywhere from 53 to 106 total units that would be allowed on the former Moose Lodge property. And as we've talked about, there is significant demolition and site clearing that's needed for the project. So here's the slide. So I have the background. I know we've talked about this probably last year when we did some background information, but you know, the Gladstone plan that the city put in place dates back to 2007. And certainly there's been progress on it since then. It's some time. The Gladstone Savannah has been established. A lot of the public infrastructure is now in place with the reconstruction of Frost Avenue. There's the phases of housing on the northwest corner with Sherman. And so it is always envisioned to be a long-term vision for redevelopment and investment in Gladstone, which is to be, you know, a mixed-use neighborhood center of housing and retail and service and parks and open space. And this probably has the best trail connections you can get in the metro with the connections to the Gateway Trail, the Bruce Vento Trail, Wakefield Park, Lake Fallon just to the west. So in terms of recreational amenities, it's a very connected neighborhood. And I won't go through these, but you know, these are the guiding principles of the not the north end, the Gladstone plan, which would be relevant when we market the site for redevelopment. So here it is zoomed in. Of course, the site we're looking at is this. My little spotlight needs to be narrower. It's the northeast corner, and this plan is not meant to be an actual site plan developed. It was developed as a vision plan for what it could be. But certainly the type of project and the orientation of buildings is codified in our zoning code so that it has a more of a pedestrian orientation, more urban feel than the site is today. So, yeah, and this is the purple line, as I mentioned. So, as you know, this is probably the closest development site you're going to get to the station in Gladstone, because the Bruce Vento corridor is the corridor in this location for the purple line bus rapid transit, and the station is. Go back to the site plan. Whoops. Well, I put there. It's on the map. The little white dot represents where the actual station will be in Gladstone. So, extremely proximate to that station. And that's I'm going to update you this later. This could have changed with some recent developments, but currently the Purple Line is intended to start construction in the next couple of years with operation in 2026. So what the solicitation is, as I said, it kind of provides a common platform of submission for each developer, and they give us background on who they are, who the development team would be, what the proposed project is in terms of types of housing, rental rates, what portion would be affordable housing or market rate, or what type of housing we're looking at. as well as the letter of intent with the terms of purchase. So that's price, duration, earnest money, kind of the nuts and bolts of the sale. And then we also request a financial pro forma. So this is kind of the financing analysis behind the project, because as you'll see, the number one thing we think is important is ability to perform. We want to make sure that we're getting into an agreement with the developer that can actually build a project out there. So the financing behind it and where they're getting their financing is important to look at. And then certainly relevant is any sort of portfolio of similar projects that they've done that they think demonstrate their success and their relationships with the community and the neighborhoods in which they develop. And so this is our proposed evaluation criteria. These would be ranked in highest priority to lowest priority. So as I mentioned, the highest would be consistency with the comp plan, the Gladstone neighborhood plan, as well as the Rush or the Purple Line project. So that would be our first criteria. Second would be the ability of the developer to perform. Third would be purchase price. Fourth would be closing date. And then fifth would be the providing affordable housing as part of the project. And sixth is the amount and length of tax increment. So if there is assistance that's requested, that really weighs in kind of the overall financing of the property. So for example, purchase price and financial assistance are very related, and we want to look at that both together. So this is how we would evaluate each of the proposals we get in a ranked priority. And when we've done this in the past, we've done the solicitation very successfully for the Gladstone House, which we just entered into a purchase, or will be entering into a purchase agreement, and the London Lane Fire Station. We did this, and we do it in a matrix in Excel and rank them on each one so that we can equitably compare each of the proposals. So, with that, we would issue the solicitation kind of in tandem of that. We would initiate the bid process for demolition. So we need to get out and get quotes and bids for what the cost of demolition will be, and then submit the deed loan application and get a council resolution of support. So those are the immediate next steps we're looking at for this property. And so, certainly, it's a lot of background. But if there are questions, I'm happy to answer it. But I think what we're looking for is any feedback you have on the solicitation and what we've proposed, and if you have any changes or comments or what's important for the project. I know when we talk to the EDA, it's the developers, when we release this, the first thing they'll call is what are the city's priorities? And when we talk about the Gladstone, they're going to want no specifics, like how important is mixed use? It's a small site, so it could be very tough to do mixed use, but what's the importance of that? What are some of the important priorities around housing? If there's any input on that the development community should know, I'm happy to take that back to them as we go through the process. So with that, happy to answer any questions and take any feedback that the commission may have.
Okay, so thoughts, questions? Open it up to the panel. Otherwise, I'll go and you can follow. Maybe I'll jar some thoughts.
I guess my only question is, when it comes to the entire plan, I know there's a lot of interesting properties all along that area. So when it comes to, say, affordable housing, are we kind of tracking each person's or each company's proposal and saying like, well, we'll put aside so many for affordable housing, or like their percentage? Do we kind of keep an overall view of the entire area? Because like if we did get a proposal for this property and they, maybe their priority wasn't affordable housing, would that be allowed in some cases as long as the entire neighborhood had a higher balance of affordable housing? Or can you kind of speak to that?
Yeah, it's an excellent question. And absolutely we track it. We track existing affordable housing units, or existing or recently constructed, and the other phases in the neighborhood to the west. And then we also pay very close attention to the other potential projects in the neighborhood and what the mix of housing units are currently planned, so that we're understanding the larger housing creation that we're doing in the neighborhood, not just on this site. So we'll certainly look in context of the Beacon project, the JB Vang project to the south, The Reuter-Walton project, which I'll talk a little bit about these updates in a bit, will certainly put it all in context of number of units, type of units, and number of affordable housing units we're getting in the current projects. So it's an excellent point.
So, Jeff, can you go back to the map with the, and I don't know if this is the best map, but the one where you had the dot for the transit station?
Purple line.
Yeah. Is that stop or station, whatever we want to call it, is that going to be in the right-of-way? Where is it going to be located? Because I'm thinking that lower yellow property, is that either potentially going to be benefited or challenged by having a station right at their corner?
Sure. The station would be within the, I don't want to confuse it, within the transit right-of-way. So,
Okay.
Because that's actually right-of-way as well. So it
Right.
would not be located within the right-of-way of Frost. It would be, so I always look at it like if you're standing on Frost Avenue looking north down the trail,
Yep.
it would be essentially just north of that intersection. So there'd be a pedestrian connection to the sidewalk directly north of that. So I know like today there's some benches and a sign that's saying proposed transit line coming soon. That's the area where the station would be. So there would be no impacts to any of the properties highlighted in yellow. Like there's no land acquisition for it.
Right.
And it's not actually located on Frost Avenue. It's located further north.
And I haven't seen the designs. I don't know if have they finalized station designs yet?
If not,
Okay.
not finalized.
So that it's still in flux, but is the proposal to be on the west side or east side of the line?
There will be one on each. So the northbound station will be on the east side, and the southbound will be on the west side. So that,
And then,
yeah,
since it's BRT, it's at grade crossing, so if the bus isn't there, it's not like you have to go to Frost to get around it. You just wait for the bus to go by and you can cross right there. So they benefit from the traffic both north and south.
correct. And there will be a stoplight installed at that intersection so that so that the cross traffic stops when the buses are coming.
Right.
And that also benefits pedestrians, and that today that trail crosses with just a marked sidewalk and no
Right.
stoplight. So it does benefit the trail users to be able to have a push button to activate the stoplights to stop the vehicles to pass. But yeah, it's at grade. There's no separation of the bus from the road.
Cool. Yeah, so that, and I'm guessing that may play into maybe some of the strategy of the existing property owners as to what opportunities or impacts the BRT will have for their businesses or their property too,
Certainly.
right?
Certainly.
I don't know if they've had those, if that's come up in conversations yet, but I'd imagine they
no.
have to be thinking about that.
Certainly, yes.
Okay. Did you have a question? Okay.
I do have a concern.
Yes.
I'm just wondering, I can't see it on the map. How far is this from the elementary school? So if the purple line wouldn't affect that.
So
school
that's
crossing,
the-
Is that correct?
Is that the only,
The word or the word?
or is that the fire station?
Yes.
Yes. So I think the school is further north, right? Yeah, I'm just going to pull up
The municipal building that was on the map with the purple line, that was actually the fire station, right?
Correct.
Just to the east of the line, just a little north?
Yeah, the blue parcel is the Gladstone Fire Station on this map.
Okay. Cool.
So Weaver is up at the intersection of B, so further to the north. And I know as part of the project, there's get the aerial photo on here, make sure I'm stating this correctly. There is an existing, I think it's a pedestrian connection from Weaver to English Street, and that crosses the trail, and that it will stay as part of the project, and they're definitely looking at pedestrian improvements for that crossing to ensure it's safe for the kids and parents and people that are accessing that pedestrian trail. So that stays. But then the bus goes under County Road B as it goes north.
Other things probably just to call out on that too, and this is also asking for your confirmation, Jeff, is I want to say the next stop north, or the second to next stop north, is basically the North End development. So it's the second stop up. So you're 2 stops from a major transit hub that could bring people down, or for housing, you're 2 stops away from bringing those residents into the North End as well. So you've got the potential flow both directions for economic growth in both of those stops.
Absolutely. With that transit investment, it's going to, the transit service improvement for this area is substantial in terms of connection to healthcare and shopping and jobs.
Yeah.
Significant.
Okay.
I do have another question. Maybe this is, so our committee is like housing and economic development. So has there been like much strategy around like the economic development? And building is economic, but like what kind of tools are we using to pull in businesses and, shops and things like that if we want it to be a thriving place for people to live and work? Like, what are we doing to try and beef up that piece of the economics?
For sure. We do all sorts of things. And I always think, housing and economic development are so interlinked. It's very hard to decouple them. Because I think that this is kind of a significant part of economic development is acquiring land that needs investment and creating, obviously there's construction jobs, but it's more tax base, to support the larger community. So they're very interlinked. The challenge that we've had in Gladstone, and probably why the plan has taken longer than the North End plan will likely take, it's a neighborhood center. It's not well regionally connected. That will improve with the transit line, but Highway 61 is a bit of ways, 36 is a bit of ways, so there's just not a strong draw for larger commercial, even retail, service. It's going to be pretty small in scale because it's going to serve kind of the neighborhood. It's not going to ever have like a regional draw like the North End or other areas of Maplewood would. So the number of in terms of percentages of development we'll see, it's going to lean residential just because of the limited market conditions that exist for larger commercial retail service office. It's just not a place where like medical office is going to locate because it just doesn't have the regional connections that they'll want. Unlike North End, which is really where those regional business centers exist and will thrive in the future.
One of the things too to bring up on that same note is because Gladstone is that neighborhood center, and because we've been talking about Gladstone, well, since we've become a headsie, and you were talking about it 10 years before that too, but it's really gotten active in the last 5 years or so, is as we did the development, the multi-use development housing. I can't remember the name of it now.
Frost English Phase 1?
Yeah, in Phase 2 and Phase 3, whatever that is. One of the things the city's done really well with is work with the local businesses, because it's a community, right? If you've got a coffee shop, and I'll use a real business. You got orchards right there. We're not going to invite Hy-Vee in when you've got that neighborhood anchor for that neighborhood. Bring more people in to appreciate what Orchards has, that type of thing. And the city has done a good job trying to preserve that when phase 2 and 3 were coming in with the housing. I know from conversations we've had in this group, you've talked to the businesses in the neighborhood about this development as well as the funeral home. And was that the house you're going to talk about later?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. So one, the city's done a good job trying to preserve those businesses that are there. That being said, though, too, and now I'm thinking about it, coffee shop, is there a local coffee shop there? If not, that's where you've got these businesses who have property who are coming in to do the development where, Jeff says, let's make it multi-use. I'll use this platform right now. If you find a local coffee shop, somewhere else in Maplewood that wants another location or needs a better location, I'd love to see us do that, help those businesses. The second thing Maplewood has done very well with for the last 10 years, and I think Borchard's is one of the businesses we've visited on our business retention program. And it may not be a bad idea. I'd have to look. Do we have past years' visits up on? We probably have them on our
They're in the reports that are on
in
the
our
website.
commissions
Yeah.
page, but they may be by date. They may not be easy to find.
Yeah.
But it has staff gone through lately those visits of those businesses in that area, because we've been doing this for 10 years, the business retention. Not a bad idea maybe to go back, and if we visited Borchard's in 2015, what were they asking for then, and how has that changed? What are their needs in the neighborhood today? But I would invite the commissioners on our commission page on the city under reports, they're there. If they're not when they present it to our commission, I think all of them would be connected to the State of the City presentations we've had, because we also connect it with that meeting as well. So definitely look them up, and it's a great way to see. And it's not just been Frost English, it's been all over the city that we do those. And I know that those have informed decisions about where to do future development and what things the city has done that have worked. And hey, let's do that again if it works. And if it hasn't, hey, let's do it different next time. So those are two things I think jump out right away as to how we do that economic development. And this project is the perfect example of where business and housing connect, where those opportunities are. Because 10 years ago, we were two separate commissions. So.
Yeah, and just to add, on the bigger picture question about, economic development, I think there's no one strategy, and I think I always think, there are three geographic focus areas that we have, North End, Gladstone, and Rice Larpenteur. Like, we have drastically different strategies on each of those, right? Like, the Gladstone, the market wasn't as ripe for development from the 2007 plan, and so what wanted to happen from a market standpoint was just kind of reuse of those buildings, and so that's why the city had to get aggressive and start actually acquiring land and positioning it for redevelopment, because that's what that area needed. North End is very different, right? We're not going to be buying land in North End. We're not going to be buying the former Sears site and position it for redevelopment. That's partnering with the private landowners and prioritizing redevelopment. And then down in Rice Larpenteur, it's community building down there, and that's building connections with businesses and trying to form a kind of an identity in that neighborhood to support the businesses and residents that are there, and frankly drive in public investment down there, because it's been kind of neglected. And so those are the three strategies that we've kind of tailored for those three priority areas. So that's kind of how we adapt to the kind of the priorities we have and throughout the whole community.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, thank you. I'm just curious to see that we're also thinking about the businesses there. And it is a good point, like so just disclosure, that's my neighborhood. So I'm like, well, the bakery and then Borchard's and like the liquor store, like, God, gosh, they've got the best beer selection, but like all of those little businesses, and then like how are we supporting them, and then what other, you know, business is missing once you add more people in from, you know, adding in new units and things like that, what would be needed there? Maybe a daycare, maybe something like that. Everywhere needs a daycare right now, God. But like, yeah, all of these, you know, what's the next, what are we doing to support the businesses that would be coming in with these new residents? So, yeah.
And you're on the right commission to bring those ideas of yours, not only as a member of the neighborhood, but as a resident of Maplewood, to say, hey, here's ideas. To Jeff's point, what works in Gladstone may not work at Rice Larpenteur, but this is where we can give the city some ideas they maybe didn't think of themselves. So that's the whole reason we're here.
Yeah, and lastly, I would tie your first comment and your second comment, right? Like, I think there's also a benefit of, and I didn't think of this till you said it, of, we talked about looking at housing broader, but it probably also makes sense to make sure we're not precluding business opportunity, you know, just like some sort of addition of retail to the neighborhood by boxing us in too much by only looking at this site. So I think looking at that broader perspective of opportunities for retail and service to create that mixed-use center important as we look at the sale of this property.
Yeah. Any other thoughts or discussion on the former Moose Lodge property? Everyone's good? All right, since that was discussion, no additional action needed from us. Anything else, Jeff, on that for us?
That's all I have.
Okay, so we would move on to unfinished business. There is none. We would move on to commissioner presentations. This is where if, I think times that we've done them in the past, myself and some other commissioners have gone to a housing seminar or something where we've wanted to report back to the commission, hey, here's what we found out. We've given the staff the reports, that type of thing. But this is where we can present things that we've experienced that are worthy of the commission and drawing to the city's attention related to business and housing. None of that today, so we'll move on to staff presentations, and we'll throw it back to Jeff to give us latest development update.
So here's my list. I'll start with Gladstone just because we're just wrapping that up. So I know we've talked about all these projects. We probably talk about most meetings, but this is the arc of development. It takes a while, but things are moving. So I mentioned the purchase agreement. The purchase agreement is on Monday's council agenda with Beacon Interfaith Housing. So they're looking at like a 40-ish unit supportive housing project on the Gladstone House property. So that's the one that's kind of north of the Philippine Center. The other very, very tough shaped building that we're also looking at demolition of this year. So I think the one thing that we're really excited about that project is, so we've had a purchase agreement last year for an affordable housing project, and these are always contingent on getting tax credits, federal tax credits that are administered through Minnesota Housing, and they are like extremely competitive. The number of projects that they ultimately fund is a small fraction of the applications that they get in, which is just the need for more federal funding, for more funding in general for affordable housing. So these projects just don't get the allotment, and then they're not able to finance them. The strong part of Beacon is their model is of around supportive housing is tailored for these programs, and this is what they do as a nonprofit housing developer, and they do it really well. And so they do 2 projects a year. When we're meeting with them, they say we do 2 projects a year, and we put 2 projects into Minnesota Housing. And I can tell you our track record is we get both of those projects funded. So there's certainly no guarantees of that funding, but it's very positive that around the funding sources for that. So we're really optimistic that project will move forward. Don't want to sell it too much, but we're happy about it. And that's a tough site. It's a small site for a housing project, and so something of that size is kind of perfect for that property. And they really like the Gladstone area. They had that's why they'd give us the purchase offer for Moose Lodge, just because they're like, they think this is a great neighborhood. We're gung ho on it and want to have a project for Beacon here in Maplewood. So they're moving forward, and that tax credit process is also painfully long, which we've talked about. They have to submit in July. They have to get the property under contract. They have to submit the application to Minnesota Housing in like the July time period, and then we don't hear if they were successful until December, essentially end of the year. And then even this year they extended that and didn't announce it till later in February, and it's only once a year that cycle happens. So, but that we're going into that purchase agreement. JB Vang is the other one I noted. They're the Hmong Funeral Home to the south of the Moose Lodge. This is a project that I think 2019 they applied. 2019, 2020, 21 they applied for federal tax credits. Haven't been successful all 3 years, and so they try to hone the project and reshape it. But they're again really want to prioritize some of their affordable housing units in that project, and so they're retooling their project to shape the tax credits. The benefit we do have this year is the county's HRA levy. You've probably heard about some of the additional funding that Ramsey County is providing towards affordable housing. And one of the big criteria for Minnesota Housing is leveraging other public dollars. And so if these projects are also able to get Ramsey County funding, it helps make for a more competitive with the state. So we're hopeful. But that project is still being reshaped. And the third one is the Maplewood Marine site. That's Reuter Walton development. And we've talked about it because we've had a purchase agreement for them for like a year and a half. And they applied for tax credits, also weren't successful. But they had an alternative plan to go to a market rate plan if they weren't successful. So they're working on their development plans for that redevelopment of the Maplewood Marine and the site that we own adjacent to it. And so I wish I had a map because you knew where that is, but just west of the Savannah, they are going to move forward with a market rate project on that site. The other items of note, Birch Run Station, I think we've talked about that. So Birch Run Station, which is the 21-acre retail building just west of the mall where Burlington Northern is, kind of an L shape.
Burlington Coat Factory.
What did I say?
Yeah, Burlington Northern.
Oh,
You got trains on your brain right now.
I do. Sorry, Burlington
I think
Northern.
AAA, Dollar Tree.
Yes.
Yep.
Burlington Coat Factory, yes. That property went into receivership. It was owned for a company in California, and they went back to the bank. And so they selected a developer, or they selected a new, sold to a new owner out of Arizona. We have been meeting with them about our vision plan, and they are really embracing it. We're having some really good conversations about reinvestment in that center, redevelopment of that center with some potential housing, public infrastructure, making potentially that east-west connection from the hospital to the mall. So there's some excitement happening there. I expect we'll know more probably in the next 60 days of what that project, how that will shape and what it'll actually look like. But we're having some really good conversations with them about, because that shopping center is it's in rough shape and needs some investment, needs some love. The other item is Purple Line. We talked about it. You've maybe read in the paper that White Bear Lake, the city of White Bear Lake council passed a resolution opposing it coming into White Bear. And although bus rapid transit projects don't require formal municipal consent from cities along the line, the Met Council is reviewing that resolution. They are considering alternatives of what that means. And next week, they will be, I think it's end of next week, there's a corridor, I forget the name of the group, it's the policymakers along the line, will be reviewing the alternatives for what to do with the White Bear Lake resolution. And that runs anywhere from just continue the project as is and move forward to finding a different terminus on the northern point that doesn't enter White Bear. So those conversations are forthcoming. You'll likely see it in the paper when it comes out end of next week, because I know it's a pretty high profile project. But they are looking at options for the Purple Line that don't continue into White Bear. We've met with them. We continue to say that Purple Line is critical for Maplewood, and we want it in Maplewood, and want it to serve the North End and the Gladstone and the stations that we have in our plan. So more to come on that, but just know that. And if they do change it, it will delay the project, just with re-engineering and changes and the federal process that it's required to go. It will delay construction and ultimately operation, which is why I referenced that a little earlier. So that's my Purple Line update. And then my last one, because I know Mark always asks me, so I'll the ponds of Battle Creek, the South Maplewood properties that Ramsey County owns. Again, that's been pretty high profile in the news. They went out, the county owns both of those properties, the correctional facility and the golf course. And I should probably have maps of this stuff. I'm sorry I didn't do that, because I know some of you may not know where all this stuff is. They went out for a solicitation of development interest out there. They didn't get any proposals for the north property. They received 3 proposals for the ponds property, and they rejected all, this is the county. The county rejected all 3, and then came back and wanted to discuss the sale of the property with the city of Maplewood. And so our council has been meeting in a regular basis in closed session to talk about that offer to sell the property. And so I think there's another closed session meeting on Monday. No decision from our council about it. That's the update of the ponds of Battle Creek.
So just to see if my ears heard that right, the county is asking Maplewood to consider buying it
Correct.
themselves. Okay.
That was the county board's action, yes.
Good to know. Okay.
So I'm sure there's development I'm missing. Menards is closed. You probably have seen that. You can't miss that if you're driving around town. It's pretty visual. I just wanted to start with demo so people don't think they're gone forever. That expects to be next week. They'll probably start the demolition of that building, and they want to be done by the end of the year, and so that they can come back and be back in Maplewood, because it's like one of their highest performing stores in the metro, which is why it's been kind of last on their list for redevelopment of their stores, and
Right.
and why they've delayed it. So that'll be moving forward.
Okay. Any questions from the commission on any other developments you're aware of that you might want updates from staff? Yeah, go ahead.
So Jeff, I just have a couple questions. You said the Birch Run, the new owner will be turning that, how did that go from a commercial property to residential housing opportunities? If we kind of, we were just talking the need for having stores and retail. How did that come about? How does that switch so quick? Or?
Yeah, and I would say the whole property won't be residential. The city did a vision plan for the North End. It was adopted a couple years ago, and as part of that, we did a market study. And we're overbuilt. North End, we're overbuilt on retail. We have too much retail.
Because of the mall, I bet.
Includes the mall, but even some of the surrounding stuff is.
DSW location there, Best Buy.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the future market opportunities are housing, but it's not just housing. Medical office, or medical, and then more of the I'll call them destination entertainment experience type things that see around a lot of malls. That as malls compete, and I don't mean just the mall, but the larger North End area, right? These retail areas are competing with online retailers. What people are looking for is uniqueness, experiences, entertainment options.
How can we help you, sir?
Is this about the trail, Bruce?
On the agenda for today? Bruce Vento Trail? Do we have
It's
that
not
on?
dedicated to that. We talk about economic development.
It says Thursday, April 21st, 5 to 7.
At what location?
I'm sorry, White Bear Lake City Hall.
Oh, that's okay.
No worries.
You got
You
time.
got a little bit of time, like
Oh,
a
so
minute.
till 7. I thought he was coming to pay a bill or something.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
So,
What was I talking about? Oh,
Okay.
yeah. So just the larger vision of North End.
So overbooked on the retail side of it, so
Yeah.
that can be deemed from commercial to residential.
Yeah.
well,
And
it
kinda-
wouldn't be residential, right? We're talking mixed use.
it's mixed use, yeah. And it wouldn't be the whole site. They're still
Okay.
looking at retaining a significant portion of retail on that site.
Okay,
But it would be reduction over the current square footage.
interesting.
Yeah, because it's interesting, over 10 years, we've gone from, I can't remember what the big box, it was like an outdoor company that's now medical offices in their parking lot.
Oh, it used to be, gosh, Cabela's?
Yeah. It was a Cabela's.
Outlet.
It was one of those
Yep.
outdoor centers. We've seen ebb and flow in the strip centers along White Bear, between White Bear and the mall. Same with the strip centers on the east side of White Bear. So there's plenty there. The stop, and actually, one of my thoughts is, if Purple Line can't go into White Bear, do we have enough parking for the northern people to come down and park at the transit hub at the north end and then take BRT to their next destination? Because the end of those types of lines oftentimes get some of the most traffic.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
And,
That's what White Bear Lake does not want.
Right.
yep, neither did Woodbury, and for the
The gold rail.
for the gold line.
Yeah, the gold line's just strong as can be for,
Yeah, and that
Yeah.
still hasn't been built out, and that's still going to end up terminating in Woodbury anyway, but not serving any of the businesses along that route. Yeah, okay, so any other thoughts or questions? I just have one update. Last two meetings, we've had some discussion of working with the University of Minnesota students on a housing study.
Thank you. Good one. I have been working with a group of students in the spring semester in a housing policy course. They're doing a lot of work for the scope of the course project. They're doing a lot of work. It revolves around a lot of like the model programs throughout the country in the metro. Like, what are other cities doing for this? They will be wrapping it up May 9th. They will be actually presenting their report to the council, giving their presentation on what they determined in the semester's worth of work. That will then lead into, I met on Monday of this week, which we always thought this would happen. There's a capstone class. So, the master's students at the Humphrey School, as part of their master's degree, have to